current election commissioner. She works with our lowest line, Sharon Wright and Scott Brown on the local election commission. She's a past chair of the Democratic Women's Club here in Hempstead County, and she just happens to work with me. So she really wasn't able to say no when I asked her if she'd like to come and talk about electioneering. So we all please welcome Cindy Newsome.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you all for having me today. As Jeff said, I'm on the election commission, and I'm really not a public speaker. I got to tell you that first off. But Jeff asked me to come talk to you about elections, which is something that he knows I feel pretty strongly about. So of course I said yes. I really like working on the election commission. I've been on it for about 3 or 4 years now. When I first became involved with the elections here in Hempstead County, I started off working as a poll worker at the high school library, and I really liked that. And then a friend of mine who was actually the 3rd member of the election commission came and she asked me if I'd be interested in taking over her job when she resigned. And I didn't know too much about the process for it, but I said, yeah, I'd be interested. She gave me a box full of supplies, and just about everything in there was handwritten lists of poll workers and everything else. And I thought, as much as I like computers and, you know, building spreadsheets and things like that, I thought, yeah, I could make this better. So I was hooked from that moment on. And luckily, when they submitted my name to the state decided that I'd be a good person for it, and so they appointed me to it. Now, the 3rd member is chosen from the party that has the most constitutional offices at the state level. So they get to choose the 3rd member. The chairman of the election commission, Scott Brown, is the chairman of the party that has the most constitutional officers. And then the minority party, which in this case is the Republican Party, their president gets to have the vice chairman position at the election commission, and that's Sharon Wright. With that background in mind, what I'd really like to talk to you today about is what it takes to be a poll worker. You probably know that we have an election coming up a week from tomorrow, and it's on the building that the college is wanting to put up, the new auditorium out there. It's going to be a busy day, of course, for all the poll workers, and there hasn't been a whole lot of stuff. There's never too much publicized about what it takes to be a poll worker. And it's kind of a thankless job. Most of the people who work who work the polls for us, they must really like it, because I can't imagine why they would do it otherwise. They get paid $90 for working for that whole day, and the state requires us to have 4 poll workers per polling site. So if that's all we can get is just 4 people to work, that means that basically those 4 people can't leave all day. So we have to tell everybody, bring your lunch, bring something for supper, bring a snack, bring a book to read during the slow periods, that kind of thing. Because, like I said, according to the state, they're not supposed to leave. If we're lucky enough to get more than 4 people to work a poll, then if there's 5 or 6, then that allows people to maybe run out and get some lunch or something like that and bring it back for everybody. Most of the people that we have working the polls for us are retired folks usually. We do have some folks who are students at colleges or something, or people who've gotten out of school and aren't working a steady job, or else they have a job where they maybe have Tuesdays off, because most elections fall on Tuesdays. To be a poll worker, you have to be a registered voter in the state of Arkansas, and you also have to have never been convicted of violating an election law, of course. As for what they do all day, they open up the polls. That includes activating the machines and getting them ready for the voters. They also take care of keeping track of all the voters who come in. The state requires us to keep a list of everybody. So just signing your name in the book's not enough. We also have to keep a list. And they also have to check your registration, make sure that you haven't already voted an absentee ballot or something like that before they can let you vote. And then, of course, have you sign the book. They activate the machines, and it's pretty simple. They just go up there and stick in the activation device, and that's pretty much all there is to it. But they do also have to kind of keep an eye out and make sure that nobody's left anything from an election, maybe left something that would be considered electioneering laying there, like a pamphlet that says, you know, vote for Hillary Clinton or something, and they have to dispose of all those. We can't allow any electioneering within 100 feet of the building, so they also have to periodically go outside and make sure that nobody's put up an election sign right in front of the building or something. And the Election Commission provides them with some with the measuring device. Usually it's a 100-foot long piece of string, and they just string it out from the doorway out to where the signs are to make sure they're not within that 100-foot boundary. They also have to make sure that the machines don't run out of paper, make sure they're printing correctly, and make sure that a voter doesn't just walk off without finishing up their ballot. With the new machines, which of course we've only had for the past couple of years, it can be kind of confusing, especially for people when they vote for the first time, because it wants to make absolutely certain that you really meant to vote for who you said you did. So once you put in all your choices, it's going to ask you to review the ballot, and then it asks you to confirm it again. So you actually have to confirm it a couple of times, and so it's up to the poll workers to make sure that everybody's ballot got finished. And if it doesn't, then we're required to get 2 people to come up and complete it for them. And luckily the machines are programmed to where even if the person didn't finish their vote, if they only voted for one person and there were 2 candidates that needed votes on the ballot, or 2 different offices I should say, they can actually vote just for the one person. Of course that would be considered an undervote at the end of the night, but that one vote does still count. And so they have to complete folks' ballots. They also, of course, they monitor the area and that kind of thing. They also watch for problems. It's up to them to make sure that nobody harasses a voter. We had a report actually at the last election that somebody was down harassing voters at the community center, which is what we call our super polling place. Those of you who vote here in Hope know that you go to the community center and there's 10 different boxes down there. And apparently somebody was causing quite a commotion, telling folks how to vote and that kind of thing. And it's up to the poll workers to either ask them politely to leave, or if necessary, call somebody in law enforcement to come and remove them if somebody's being too disruptive. They also have to close the polls at the end of the night. Of course, that requires all their paperwork has to be sealed up. They also seal the machines when they're finished tabulating the votes on those, and that's all activated from a device similar to the one they use for the ballot. It's a lot of times they'll have slow periods where they maybe don't do a lot, and then other times they're really busy. In order to be a poll worker, they also have to attend a training, which we will be holding probably mostly in May and maybe even late April. And it's usually Sharon and I who are the ones who attend the training in Little Rock, and then we come back and train the folks here and tell them about the new laws and things. And sometimes it can get pretty confusing. One of the ones that seems to confuse poll workers the most is that the federal law says that you have to ask everyone who votes for an identification. But the people who vote don't have to provide an identification. So if they don't have it with them, they don't have to, it doesn't make any difference, but we still have to ask for it, the folks who work the polls. So, and sometimes we'll have other things that come up that are kind of confusing like that. So it can be quite an ordeal. We usually spend 2 or 3 hours trying to convince everybody tell them about all the laws and everything, and sometimes we end up having to try to undo training we just did with them a year ago, because our legislature likes to change the rules on us, usually several times on several different things in 1 year. So that can kind of make for kind of a stressful time for the folks who work for us. They have to be prepared for power failures and things. When the power goes out, the machines won't work. They've actually got a battery backup in them, so the terminal itself will work, but the state of Arkansas wants a paper trail of every ballot, and the printer that's inside there does not have a battery backup. So consequently, if the printer doesn't work, the machine won't allow you to vote. So we're back to paper ballots and doing things the old-fashioned way if that happens. And poll workers have to be ready for situations like that as well. If they attend the training, they get an extra $25 for the first election after that. If somebody comes in and attends the training and then they don't come to work for us in May, then they're out the $25, which is kind of disappointing, I'm sure, for some of them, because it usually happens, some things come up, and then they can't work, and unfortunately then they don't get paid for having spent a whole day training with us. Obviously they're going to use that training in elections all throughout the entire year, but unfortunately they have to work the election right after the training in order to get it.